Let's start with the Cisco design lifecycle, and especially why do we need a lifecycle? So, lifecycle nowadays is needed because of network complexity. So, as network grows and get so large that at a point you kind of need to implement a lifecycle. You cannot just replace your equipment when it's due to be replaced. Let's say out of warranty. Well, that's a valid reason, but honestly, if you don't have a life cycle implemented, you might end up with part of your network that outgrow other parts, and then you create more point of contentions. And when it comes to implement your new solutions, you might run into problems. So so we really need to go and implement a life cycle. We'll explore what exactly is a life cycle, but why do we need one? It's because of network complexity. It's because it's a framework. We'll see what exactly is a framework, but a framework is it's a base to build upon. Then our ROI, the return on investment, it's really important, especially if you're a solution architect or solution engineer. You need to validate your solutions against return on investment. Your customer, whether it's an inside customer or whether it's an outside customer, like your you have actually a client. They want a return on their investment, and so if you implement a life cycle, you can actually place that investment, and you can actually present it with hard numbers. Regulation, some places require that the equipment is under warranty, for example, or that it supports newer version of protocols. Competitiveness, yes, that's a valid point too. And this is it's more well, some of your customer might reach at you because they want to be competitive, but most of the time that would be you toward your customers within the discussion. If you want to stay competitive, you need to be able to scale fast. You need to be able to deploy your application fast. You need to be able to react fast. If you implement a life cycle, that allows you to do that, because within the life cycle, we'll explore this in a few slides, but within the life cycles, there are some points where we can go back or implement on fast forward. Removal of borders. When we say removal of borders, we're talking about the branches, we're talking about wireless access, BYOD, bring your own device, favorite customer, customer working remotely. Also, application hosted within a data center now can actually move within data centers, and from data centers to data centers. You can actually have branches kilometers away with a data center where your application could move, or you could have multiple sites hosting the same application. And then the growth of application, yes, application grows over time. Just look at your cell phones. We need more storage space nowadays because each applications are growing. They're growing in terms of demand. They're growing in terms of size itself, but also in terms of resource consumptions. So how do we build a framework? Well, a framework, well, anyone used to see these site where they build a new house, and then the first thing they do is they build a framework. Actually, if you really look at it, it's like they're not building the walls as they go. They start with the framework, so they have really a plan in mind, and they follow it. That allows you to stay on the plan. So why? Because it lowered the TCO. TCO is the total cost of ownership. So if you build as you go instead of having a plan, well, you might end up where you have to look over your shoulder and say, whoa, maybe we oversubscribe too much. Now we need more, let's say, aggregation point. On the other side, if you have a framework, if you plan ahead, you have already those hard numbers. So you will not be looking over your shoulder. So you don't have surprises and your TCO will remain the same. Increase network availability, especially to meet your SLA, your service level agreement. If you build a framework before you start, if a framework is what your life cycle rests on, you will always look ahead and you will not deviate from your plan. So you will meet your SLA. Probably when you deployed on your SAO, we'll look at that later, but you probably told your customer, well, we're probably going to be able to build this within 40 hours. Now, if you don't have a framework, if you don't have a plan, well, you might deviate from this, and then you will not meet your SLA. Also, to improve your business mobility, speed up applications and service access. So what exactly is it? It's availability, reliability, security, scalability, and performance. So what exactly is lowering a TCO? So which actions that lower the TCO, the cost of ownership? Well, identifying and validating technology requirements. So for example, if you identify your point of contentions, or if you identify exactly the bandwidth requirements from, say, let's have a look at a branch. So you have a branch, 50 employees. If you can identify, so if you can validate what's the bandwidth required for the application to reach them, to provide a certain performance, well, then you can select the right technology for this. So is this going to be a T1, a Metro E? Are you going to use to leverage the internet to do it? So the choice of the technology will be according to the identification of the need. Planning for infrastructure changes and resource requirements. Same thing. So infrastructure changes and the resource requirements. Key points here. Develop a network that meets the goals. So your goal is to actually deliver better performance. Well, then you might as well concentrate on the bandwidth or the latency of your application. The goal is to reduce costs. Well, then maybe that Metro is too expensive. Maybe you want to leverage the internet then. Improving network efficiency and staff support. That's very important. So if you simplify the network, if you, for example, you remove the administrative tasks from the branch and localize it on your HQ, well, then it'll be more efficient. And the staff support, if let's say you standardize all your branches, well, then your staff will be able to support better your organization, because in fact, if they all are the same, well, it's kind of applying a template to everything. So if a problem arises and you identify it and then you resolve it, probably the same plan can be applied if a similar problem happens somewhere else on your network. Reduce OPEX. Well, that's an important word probably for the exam. Just saying. Operational expenditure. So, lowering the cost. So, an action that could lower the cost, well, to reduce the operational expenditure. How you would do that? Well, like I said, moving your administration point from your branches or reducing administration overhead on the branches and moving it into your HQ, that would be one. So operational is more about employee times, staff support. So it's operation. It's not anything that has to do with something physical like a switch or a router. How do you now increase the network availability? So actions that increase network availability, well, network assessment. How do you know your network is running as it should if you never made an assessment before? Well, how can you compare if you don't have a baseline? So a network assessment is really important. So at some point, if you have an assessment and over time you can always refer to your assessment, well, you can at least know if buying this new line resolve the bandwidth problem or the latency problem, if using the new technology really allowed you for your application to move better. So an assessment is kind of important on this. Select the right platform, the license and version. Let's say you went for a cheaper license which did not support, let's say, VSS or technology like HSRP, and those were on your first gateway. Well, then your availability might decrease. So yes, and routing protocol will fail over to the next router. But with technology like HSRP, well, it provides a better performance at failover, for example. VSS would reduce spanning through convergence events. Meaningful design from CVD, so Cisco Validated Design. So meaningful design. So you choose design that applies to your network. So why would you choose DMVPN, for example, if you only have 2 branches? That might be an oversight, but let's say you deploy this and there were no plans ahead to scale your branch size or scale the amount of branches. Well, that's just another technology you need to support. It's an administrative overhead in this case. That's a small example, but 2 static routes would have done the work. Other way around, 15 branches. And if you look at the history of the company, they started with 2 branches like 2 years ago. They're at 15 branches now, and they're expecting to grow again. And then you choose or you select to go with static routes at this point in time. Well, that might not be the meaningful design. It might not be a design that's in line with your situation. Stage and test your system before deployment. This happens, and this still happens nowadays. You order the equipment, you don't apply or you don't test the actual configuration on the hardware, and for some reason the license wasn't the right one. Then you try to enable the feature on the day on the cutover, or not necessarily the cutover, but the window of maintenance, and then you see, whoa, we're missing that license on box 22. What are you going to do? Well, you just lost a maintenance window. Then you have to go back and request that license, activate the license. So if you stage or if you pre-stage and you test the hardware before, the license and the configuration, well, you're going to save time. Plan for knowledge transfer. This is very important. Deploy and maintain monitoring systems. So you deploy new equipment, it's in place. A week later, you're asking if it actually improved the network. And probably the reaction is gonna be like, I don't know, it's the same, it's slower, it's faster, I think it crashed. You won't actually know. So if you have monitoring systems in place, well then, just like your network assessment we just saw previously, well, you have a baseline to compare with. Then you have hard numbers and you know exactly what's going on. Identify security branches and define remediation plans. That's a hard one for me. Yeah, exactly. If it's a deployment that has to do with security, yes. Even if it's in test stage, you should be able to identify your breaches and remediation plans. You just need to define them. No network is perfect, no security is perfect, but if you identify those breaches and you define your remediation plans, well, then you're set because it won't happen again. Improve business mobility. Well, what are the actions that could improve the business mobility? Well, you establish requirements. So this application, does it need to be available at all branches? Do you need to back up your database somewhere else and then be able to spin it up? Identify technology strategies. That would be part of it. Conform sites where the implementation will take place. That's very important. So even if you're set to deploy a network infrastructure, you still need to know where are going to be the applications. If the applications is hosted on site A, and at site B there's not going to be any application, but then you need to reach them from site B, well, that's an important detail. Produce a detailed design. Yes, the more detailed the design, the better the mobility of your business can be, because changes can be made easier. Produce a comparison to established baseline. Well, like I said previously, if you provide a baseline, then you know where your application can go. Then you allow your business to be more mobile. Be an expert in your delivery. Yes, be an expert in your delivery. The better your delivery, the better you look you look like, the better it is on your resume, yes, but also the better it will serve your business, and then you can continually tune and improve the performance. So we talk about application. So speed up applications and service access. So actions that accelerate access to applications and services. Well, improve operations prior to deployment. It's all part of your framework. So if your staff is already learning on the new technologies that's going to be part of the next deployment, that's what we call improving operations. If the new backup tests report are already in place, well, it is prior to the deployment. So on deployment day, or once the deployment is done, it's going to accelerate everything. Be an expert in your delivery. Again, yes. Improve availability, reliability, stability of the network. These three words we'll explore later, but they're really important. So right now it seems kind of obvious. We'll explore them a bit more deeper. What exactly Cisco defined as availability and reliability and stability. But they speak for themselves. The more available, the more your application is reachable. The more reliable, well, at the end of the day, if it works, it works. Stability, well, that would be, let's say we talk about network protocols. Well, there are some network protocols that are really stable. There are other network protocols that would, reconverge slower. Well, if you have stability of your network, well, then those convergency event or time are reduced to minimum. Resolve problems early. Keep your applications current.